Risks should be calculated and reviewed. They can well be worth the chance. All of my career, I've only ever worked for privately owned businesses and private individuals. And I've been close to the risk-taking decisions as a result of that, and also been a part of shaping some of those.
You had the management buyout, you exited from Harris Pye, you now have a variety of things, including angel investing, advising startups, which comes with its own risk. What is your risk tolerance like?
If you're involved in the startup world, you have to be a little bit more liberal. Just because somebody's got a great idea doesn't necessarily mean it'll turn into a commercial success. I'm chasing investments for profit. I get pitched probably 20 offers a month. If I choose 3 to invest in a year, that's probably a busy year. We were told light touch due diligence is going to take 3 months, and it took 13 months to achieve.
What changed after the management buyout? How were your days and weeks structured before and then after?
Probably got worse in terms of the amount of time that you've got to put into a business, because now all of a sudden everything you've got, I just bet on black, and if it came up red, that's the end of that. I've got nothing else to fall back upon.
Hello, I'm Kieran O'Connor and welcome back to the Calculated Risk podcast. This is episode 3, and today we are joined by someone who also has some Welsh roots, Mark Prendergrast. After building Harris Pye for the last 2 decades, he exited that business in 2018. He now lives here in the UAE, is a golden visa holder, and spends a lot of his time angel investing, mentoring, and advising startups. Hello, Mark. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Very welcome. Hi, Kieran. Thanks for inviting.
There's a rumor in Dubai that this is your first podcast ever.
It is. That's correct.
I'm a very lucky man. Thanks for coming on.
No, you talked me into it, as I said.
Good. Well, I like to start the same way every time. We've spent some time together off camera.
We have.
And I know we know a lot of things about each other, but this is going to be quite interesting for me and other people to hear about the journey from the start to where we are now.
Okay. I'll try and keep it interesting.
The theme is around risk taking. So I want to understand, probably a bit earlier in your career, what was the first risk that you can remember taking, and how did it play out?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. First risk. Probably the first risk I can remember being around rather than myself taking, because I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Both my parents were retail businesses. When I was at a young age, my father left a very steady job to go and create his own greengrocing business, and had a business sat alongside my mother. So the big risk was coming out of a job that gave him a steady income, because he ran David Morgan's store at that point in time. So it was a good job. And he took a risk, and it worked out very, very well for him. So it kind of played out in my mind that even though risks should be calculated and reviewed, they can well be worth the chance. And throughout all of my career, I've only ever worked for privately owned businesses and private individuals. And I've been close to the risk-taking decisions as a result of that, and also been a part of shaping some of those. So that encouraged me to create my own opportunities, and ultimately became one of the owners of Harris Pye when we were given the opportunity to run a management buyout, even though we were asked to do it. And then it got taken away for us for 12 months, but with a dogged determination, and you get there.
Yeah, which we'll come on to shortly. So just to clarify, you think that being around a family, or your family being entrepreneurs, helped you with your mindset and your risk-taking tolerance?
100%. I mean, I'm a little older than you, Kieran. I won't bore people with my age, but the reality of life was, when I was growing up, I felt that we were surrounded by entrepreneurship. And by that, I mean that every family that I knew had either an immediate family member or an extended one, an uncle or an auntie, that had their own business, whether it be window cleaning, hairdressing, garage mechanic, whatever, shopkeeper. We were called and talked about ourselves as a nation of shopkeepers. We don't see that these days. People work for fulfillment centers and DHL delivery drivers and things of that nature. So, and there's several generational unemployed people as well. So as a consequence, some people don't even realize what a job is, let alone what entrepreneurship is, which is why I'm quite passionate about entrepreneurship and enterprise as a result. And I felt that gave me a great insight to it, because we talked about the challenges and the benefits pretty much every tea time or dinner time. We were all sat together. And as a result of that, my younger brother started his own business, which he exited last year and has retired from. And my sister, who's a bit younger than I am, has her own business and is a shareholder and a director of a successful contracting business in South Wales as well. So we all came out with a view of what we should do with our lives, and an element of being prepared to take that gamble and take that risk.
Let's fast forward to now then, because which we'll come on to in a minute, you had the management buyout, you exited from Harris Pye, you now do a variety of things, including angel investing, advising startups, which comes with its own risk tolerance. So now, Mark Prendergast, today, what is your risk tolerance like?
Well, if you're involved in the startup world, you have to be a little bit more liberal in that respect, because just because somebody's got a great idea doesn't necessarily mean it'll turn into a commercial success. And there are many, many ideas out there that, should be supported philanthropically and should be supported for the benefit of a community, should we say. But that doesn't necessarily make it an angel investing proposition. I'm chasing investments for profit. That's what I do as an individual, although I do sit on a couple of boards as either a trustee or a board advisor for charitable organizations with some of the areas of knowledge that I've got. But for me, I get pitched probably 20 options or offers a month. If I choose 3 to invest in a year, that's probably a busy year in that respect.
Well, I'm going to be excited to come onto that topic a little bit later in the conversation about what you look for and what the good things are and what the things that maybe aren't so good. But I want to go right back to the beginning, because if I'm saying this right, most people will know you from your success from Harris Pye.
Yep.
But let's go back to the beginning days, because if I'm right in what I've checked out, you had one job before you went to Harris Pye?
I had a couple of jobs before. I didn't, but when I grew up, and by that I mean when I was 18, everybody didn't go to university. It was the cream of the crop went to university. I didn't go to university. I wasn't considered to be the cream. But I went to tech, came out with a HND, was poached by, or approached by a private accounting firm because my specialty was IT and finance, and that was fairly new when I was 18 in that respect. And I went to this private accounting firm to set up a computer bureau service because businesses couldn't afford computers. It was £10,000 for a floppy disk drive in those days, and as a consequence, I did that for about 3 years, and then moved from there to the job that you're talking about before Harris Pye in that respect, which was where I was involved in my very first transaction. And then I moved from that business into a spin-off business with a view to growing it in the events industry. And it didn't quite work out, should I say. And after 5 years, I left that business and ended up at Harris Pye.
So thinking back to that first position that you had before Harris Pye, the several years you spent there, like what things do you remember and how do you perceive that position when you think back to it?
I think it gave me a really good grounding. The business, I was looking after the IT and the finance. I wasn't the financial director or the financial controller, but all the IT platforms for all the branches across all of South Wales, because it was the UK's largest private tool hire company at that stage. And I was responsible for all the revenue sites and all the IT and making it stand up and work, which was why I was involved in the transaction, because that's where all the due diligence was coming from in that particular perspective. And that kind of gave me my real close, open view as to how exciting that world could be, and how interesting it could be, and how you can perhaps scale it and take a bit of risk and take something back from it.
So for people who aren't aware of Harris Pye and what the company does, let's give us a short explanation of how the business operates. Okay,
I didn't found Harris Pye. Harris Pye was founded in 1977 by a Mr. Harris and a Mr. Pye. And it was bought by a Mr. Jones and a Mr. Dawson about 15 years later. And they took it from a local jobbing contractor in the local power stations, like Esmouth Power Station, for example, into the marine world. And it was a specialist global repairer of marine boilers. So in the days when steam moved tankers from A to B and moved all the oil from A to B, it was boilers that provided all the propulsion. If your boiler was broken, your tanker didn't move. So it cost a fortune if it was sat there doing nothing. So by specialising in that very early on, they picked a very good niche market. And when I joined them, they were the world's largest privately owned boiler repair company in that respect.
Wow. So they bought the business 15 years ago. What year did you join?
I joined in 96.
So you joined in 96. You mentioned at the beginning of the conversation about the influence your family had on you because of the entrepreneurial stuff.
Yeah.
So thinking back, when you joined Harris Pye, were you thinking bigger than the position you were going in at?
Well, no, actually. The reason I joined Harris Pye was the company I'd been working at was supposed to come across with a share ownership for me, and they reneged on it. And as a consequence, I was really, really annoyed, should we say, as I was driving home from Bridgend. Grabbed a Western Mail in the local petrol station, got home, read it, and the only thing in there was a PO box number looking for an office manager. So I applied for that. That turned out to be the Harris Pye job, and what they were looking for was somebody who could come in, upgrade all their systems, and give them a platform upon which they could become investable. So it was actually quite a nice job for me to get involved in. I got involved in that, and within 18 months, they were invested in by 3i. And I moved to Dubai as a result of that investment to open a business here and open a legal business here. They had a man based here, but he was servicing business from Singapore or from UK, because they only had two places in the globe then. And I came and made a legal standing organisation and grew it around the GCC for 5 years before they asked me to go back and do the same thing in the UK and start to take it a little bit more worldwide.
So you joined as the office manager, and after 18 months, only 18 months, they asked you to come out here to the UAE or the GCC and build the business out here.
Yep, as a GM.
That seems like quite a short period of time and a lot of trust and accountability. Why did they pick you?
I think because I solved the problems that they'd seemed to have had for some time in the UK, and they trusted me to build something for them here, as I converted something for them in the UK and brought the ability for them to be invested in. Whether they thought that was good or bad afterwards was their decision, not mine. But I took the opportunity to do that because I felt it was then I didn't think it was entrepreneurial. I thought it was an opportunity and a chance to grow something and earn some salary and see a little bit more of the world other than the M4 corridor, which is what I was used to at that.
It definitely was entrepreneurial, coming out here.
I'm thinking about it now, thinking backwards and taking a different view on it and everything you look at with a slightly different lens as you age, should we say. And it was a great move for me personally, and it kind of underpinned everything I've ever done since.
So that was many years ago. You've lived here and you travel between the UK and Dubai occasionally. What was the first couple of, I guess, months, maybe the first year, like when you moved to the complete other side of the world, Middle East, and you were trying to grow a business? Well,
I came here with my family, and my eldest son was 3 months old when I got here, and my daughter was 3. And what I now know is that it's harder on families than it is on the people who are actually doing the work. When I landed, I had a full diary every single day for the foreseeable future because I was trying to build a business. I was in 3 or 4 GCC countries pretty much every other week in that particular perspective. So you're spending a lot of time away, a lot of time running around. And it's very, very difficult to integrate your family life if you're around young children because you need to take them out, you need to be involved, you need to find people. I think if you've got children of school age, it's a little easier. But ours was slightly younger then in that respect. And I think they found it a lot harder than I found it. My diary was full pretty much on day one because I was given a list of contacts and a list of clients and a list of suppliers and go and sort it out. So I did.
And what was it like doing business over here from, you've come over from the UK. Give us an idea.
Very different. I mean, I slightly said there off camera, the first thing is that you're not allowed to own 100% of your business when I first came here. You can now. You can 100% share ownership in different categories and on land, as opposed to just free zones, which I'm sure you'll explain if you need to people what a free zone is. But we had no choice but to only own 49% of our company and take a local partner who owned 51% of the company. So straight off the bat, it's very, very different to how you're used to operating a business. And then you have to buy into the trust and the rules and regulations of this part of the world, which some people find harder to do than others. There's no doubt about that. I quite liked the gentleman who was our partner. He was quite a simple gentleman, an ex-fisherman. He was happy to be involved in the oil and gas game, but he was being guided by a captain, an Indian tanker captain who was owned a marine service repair business that would pretty much repair and fix anything on a tanker. With the exception of the boilers, because that's a little bit more specialist in that scenario. And we were a subdivision of that business. So the local Emirati who owned 51% of that business also owned 51% of ours. It was similar clients. We were working together in different areas. We could pull manpower from them, equipment from them, materials. They could pull specialist expertise from us. And you very quickly learned to collaborate before collaborate was a real word in business here. Because there was just a number of businesses here in different spaces, in different spots in and around Dubai, and you had to find a way to move your particular job from A to B, and you did it with collaboration and support from partners at that point in time.
And you said you spent 5 years out here.
Yeah,
at that time?
initially, yeah.
I'm very interested in people, as you know, and like the leadership side of things, and also like communication. So I want to try and understand, thinking back to the people that you had above you, who maybe you were reporting into, because I know you would have had people reporting into you as well at times. Like what sort of leadership and management styles do you remember were good for you, and then maybe like not so good?
I think control and command is not so good for me. To be perfectly honest, I like a little bit of leeway, and a blank sheet of paper to build what I'd like to build on it, to be perfectly honest. And there was times in that business where both were handed down. When I first came here, it was control and command because the incoming investor, VC, had put a new MD in place. And over time, that first 5 years, that guy really wasn't that successful in that position. They removed him. The two owners got back involved in the business, but then didn't want to perhaps take up all the traveling and the running around, and then asked me to come back and be the general manager for the group as opposed to just this particular area in that respect. So, and then I was given a little bit more leeway. I sat on the board. The board would decide what they wanted to do. I wasn't a director of the business, although I now know I was a shadow director, which is a whole similar thing in that respect. But they would decide what they wanted executed, and I'd get given the instructions to go and do it. So I was the de facto managing director in terms of making it happen. But it wasn't a control and command. It was, how do you think we should do it? Right, come back next month and tell us what you've done. And that's what excites me, is the runway and the free element to create it and build it myself.
So at what stage in the journey did you and other members of the team start thinking about the MBO?
Good question. And to be fair, off the bat, some great people I work with, to be perfectly honest, and they were all part of the whole. One individual could have done this on their own. They were good individuals. All very, very different backgrounds, very different skill sets, but that's what makes a great team, I feel, in that respect. And we first started talking about it probably in 2005. I mean, when 3 Eyes came in and bought in 97, 98, whenever it was, they were only going to stay in for 3 years. Oil price crashed in 2000. Went down to $12 a barrel. It was absolutely awful. They couldn't get out. After about 5 years, they started talking about wanting to remove themselves. We talked amongst ourselves as to whether we could find some level of putting a deal together as a management team. That was taken away from us in 2006 because they employed a third-party company to sell the business. They then engaged one individual organization, whose name I won't mention, for 11 months. And that's when I saw the opposite side of a transaction, which is how a corporate perhaps approaches things. Because I'd never worked for a corporate at that stage. And they spent 11 months trying to get a deal over the line without once engaging the management team that they were supposed to be relying on to make this business successful for them. After 11 months of trying, and they decided that they couldn't make it work, they pulled away, and we were given a month to come back with a view as to how we could do that. We'd been talking about it as that year was progressing, and we came back with a plan, and within 5 months, I think we got it all done. So.
And how was the whole experience? Because a lot of people watching this would never have gone through an MBO, may never go through an MBO. So how do you remember the time? Again,
I think, and you're right, I talk to a lot of people about my individual journey, and there's not many people I know that joined the business, went through it, finished as the GM, led a management buyout, and exited at a later stage. And it was, all the journey was great, but then I only remember the good parts. I did because choose not to remember the other parts. But the actual journey to get to the management buyout was quite frustrating at times. It was quite difficult at times. It was the amount of paperwork and the amount of challenges that people throw at you, and the amount of knowledge that you've got to suddenly find from somewhere and begin to understand what the hell it is people are talking about before you can actually get a deal done was immense. But, if you want something bad enough and you're prepared to do it and you've got a good team around you and everybody wants it, why wouldn't you? So
what changed after the management buyout? Like how were your days and weeks structured before and then after?
Probably got worse in terms of amount of time that you've got to put into a business, because now all of a sudden, everything you've got, I just bet on black. And if it came up red, that's the end of that. I've got nothing else to fall back upon. But that was the same for every other member of the management team. And there was 13 of us that were in that management buyout, and we're all shareholders of the business as a result of that. And we'd all put something in the middle. all of them very mixed financial background, and there were some people that put everything they had. There were some people that borrowed to put everything in there that they had and more. But what it did do was concentrate the mind, and you're totally focused on success. Everyone's focused on success. People tend not to argue a lot with each other when you're all trying to get to the same winning line, if you like, and first past the post. And it did keep everybody focused in the early days. Over time, because we were all of different ages, a few people retired, a few people left, a few people decided they wanted to be bought out, that type of thing. At the start of that, there was 13 of us working in the business. At the end of that, there was like 6 of us working in the business. So as a consequence, when you've got more shareholding outside of the business than inside of the business, then perhaps you feel like you're carrying an unfair weight in that scenario. And I think when we sold the business in beginning of 2018, it was the right time to sell the business. My then chairman and also a good business mentor of mine used to talk about getting the shareholders to agree on something like herding cats in that particular perspective. You get 3 there and then they disappear and you get another 2 there. And that's what it felt like, to be perfectly honest. And at the end, Harris Pye had its time. It was a very, very successful business during that period. It's a very, very different looking business today, but then that was the desire of the people who bought it. But when we had it, it was focused on what it did well, it delivered well. Started as a marine buoy repair company and we exited as an energy services company at the end of the day. So it underwent its own transformation, and you undergo transformation as a direct result in that space. So very steep learning curve, lots more hours in the day and a lot of sleepless nights, it has to be said.
So after the MBO, how long was it between then and the exit in 2018?
2007, we bought the business, and end of December 17, beginning of January 18 is when the paperwork was finally completed. I stayed in the business for 2 years after that. A year, and before I decided I didn't really enjoy corporate life, to be perfectly frank. I didn't think I would, and it was decided that I didn't. But then I was on a year's notice, so I had to give a year's notice to leave. So I gave a year's notice I was going to retire, and I retired in May 2020, which just when COVID hit the world. So it sounds as though it was a great timing on my part, but I didn't see it 12 months earlier. I was happy that timing did exist, because I wouldn't have wanted to run the business over that period of time, because it was an executing business that you can't run from a kitchen table, that's for certain. And I know it was a tough time for the business, and I have lots of empathy for the people that were running it at that stage, but I'd stopped being in any control of the business 12 months earlier than that, and I was just acting as a consultant and an advisor for the last 12 months of my time there. So
you've got quite a unique story, right? You've just mentioned yourself that not many people go through an MBO and then exit a business that they didn't actually found. You joined as an office manager. So I'm very, very interested myself in the journey from MBO. So that's completed. You are now heavily involved, like you said, time, energy, all invested, to the 10 years roughly to when it exited. Like, what was that time like in terms of, I guess I'd like to know the challenges, and then also, the teamwork and communication from 13 stakeholders that went down to 6 or shareholders.
Yeah, okay. Good, two good questions there. I think probably, the deal that we did was a bank-backed deal. So it was available in those days. I think it went away for some period of time. I'm told it's back again now, but not something I've looked at, so I couldn't confirm it, yay or nay. But one of the mechanisms that the bank put in there that I really, really look back on and think was a really helpful thing for me, I didn't think that at the time, it has to be said, was you're submitting your business plan, and if you're generating additional cash and you're not planning to do anything with it, you're not allowed to pay yourself any dividends until all your loans are paid back, which is sensible in that particular perspective. But they would come along and do a cash sweep. And so that would mean they would take your cash, and then if you had another 4 years of repayments of your loan left to go, they would pay it off the 48th month inwards. So it would bring their risk down and you still maintain your risk level. So 6 months out from the end of every financial year, we as a company were looking, were we going to generate any cash, and what were we going to reinvest it in? And how could we grow the business with it as a direct result? And you really have to know what you're doing, and you have to make certain that you're your maths are right and your risk profiling of it is right. Because if you've decided to spend it and commit it and you don't make it, it's going to be a very different viewpoint at the end of the 12-month period. But we did that for, I think our loan was 6 years. We managed to pay it back in 4 years, 4.9 months or something in that respect. So we paid it early, but we kept reinvesting and doing everything we possibly could. And that really made us grow the business quite substantively over that period of time. So that was a great mechanism, and also made you communicate very, very effectively as a board and as a group of shareholders, because everybody's moaning and groaning. Everybody wants an increase in pay. Everybody wants a bonus. Everybody. But you've signed as a director of the business and a shareholder of the business that you're not taking any bonuses. You're not taking any dividends until you pay your loans back. And so as a consequence, you've got to sit and talk about how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and why you think it's going to benefit the business as a whole, and then everybody else as a result. And then everybody's got to want to be there at the end to actually get the benefit from that as a result. And over that period of time, there was a couple of people that decided that they didn't want to wait that long until the end. One gentleman stepped back and asked us to buy his shareholding, and we did buy his shareholding, and the business bought it, and we all increased our own shareholding as a direct result. And we also we'd identified 10 people within the business that we thought were key for it, and we gave those individuals bonuses linked to exit plans, so a percentage of the business, but it wasn't an actual shareholding percentage, and they had to be there at exit. A couple of those decided that they didn't want to be there at the exit, and they left during that period of time. But pretty much of the 23 people that were in that space over the time that we ran the business, I think 19 was still there at the end in that. So it wasn't too bad an attrition rate during that period of time. So we must have been doing something.
Yeah, for sure. Again, quite unique that you've done an MBO and a exit in one company. So what are the differences in, I guess, the due diligence maybe, or the overall process from an MBO versus an actual exit?
I think the MBO due diligence was simple because you're running the business. So the only person who can give you any warranties is yourself, isn't it? So you're warranting the bank, and they're just making sure they got first dig on everything that you earn. We had to move all our bank accounts, had to move our mortgages, had to. So they can watch your financial profile purely and simply and get any early radar warning if there's anything going on in that particular scenario. And I get that, and that was fine. Due diligence on the way out to another company coming in was a very, very different ask and look and feel. We were told light touch due diligence is going to take 3 months. It was, I don't know, we had a data room of 56,000 pages in it, and it took 13 months to achieve. So if that's light touch, then, I don't think so in really that respect. But very, very frustrating. Deal date shifted 6 times, I think, during that period of time. It was off 3 times during that stage, and you've committed huge sums of money and management time to getting it done. But I think it's really, really important that you do it for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons. And if somebody's trying to change the shape of the deal towards the end of it because they can, you've got to take your own view as to whether you think that's good, bad, or indifferent. And because of the way our deal was particularly done, any one shareholder who wasn't happy with it could stop the deal. Many threatened, but nobody actually did.
There's a couple of things there. So, my world that I work in, work with early stage companies who've usually raised investment. And I would say 90% of the people that I speak to, being directly the founders or executives, the process takes so long that when it actually happens, it's almost like an anticlimax and the excitement's gone. Yeah. And I imagine that it's same just from hearing your story there about it taking 13 months instead of 3. From the outside, people look at it, oh, you exited the business, that must have been a great time. But the, I guess, stress, the overwhelming feeling of the long process, it kind of takes the excitement away. Would you agree? Absolutely.
I can remember the first time that we specified the deal date, and it was baked in. This was, if it wasn't going to happen, it had to happen at that date. And if it didn't happen that date, it wasn't going to happen. I decided that as an opportunity just to do some R&R after 10 months of playing around with this, that I was going to take my family over to Spain where my brother lived, took my sister and her family over, my mother and father over, and we all had a lovely big wider family holiday in a nice space, and we were just going to chill out for 10 days and enjoy myself. The deal was postponed the day before I flew. So, I was supposed to be having 10 days peace and quiet with my family and saying, yes, we achieved that. That's nice. Nothing could have been further from the truth in that particular perspective. They rarely saw me because it was lots and lots of phone calls and running to business centres and trying to sort other things out while you answer more due diligence questions. And that continued for about 3 months in that respect. So I didn't make the mistake of trying to book another holiday until it was done.
Yeah. There must be a lot of stress, right, at that time?
I look back at it and yes, it was. But I don't think you necessarily feel it perhaps that much at the time because you have an agenda, you're trying to achieve it, you're trying to move things towards it and get it done. And I suppose it all depends on how you handle stress as an individual. And I know people handle things very, very differently. And I know lots of people, self-included, who say, I don't feel stressful, and you're probably the most hateful person on the planet to anyone around you at that point in time. So as a consequence, I think you're the last person that recognizes stress in yourself. So I would never say I wasn't stressed. I probably was. But I never let it overtake what was in front of me in that particular.
And I guess in the moment, you're so motivated by achieving the outcome, which is the exit, that you don't really have time to stop and think about.
100%. If the date's gone from there to there, and you've got that and that to do, you just concentrate on that and that and get it done and try to find out why it's not done at that particular date then. So there's always another box to tick or another road to walk in order to get the next thing on the line authorized and moved. And it's just a constant game of, I don't know, move the ball, I suppose.
Yeah. I've spoken to many people on this podcast who have exited business. And a cool topic that comes up is around like the identity shift of when you sell a business. Now, I know you stayed on as an advisor, so perhaps it's some of the people that I'm referencing here had a clean cut. They sold the business and the next day they were no longer part of the business. So, but I guess for you, after all the due diligence, all that time in the process, and you sold the business, and your stake wasn't as important as it was the day before. Did you sense a change of identity? And it's almost like, oh wow, this isn't a part of me anymore.
No, is the short answer. But the reason being was that the company that bought us had previously bought 13 other businesses, and they bought us to sort of glue all those businesses together and become the front end of that, and to become the delivery module for the whole group. So the plan was to roll all the businesses into Harris Pye, or whatever they wanted to call it going forward. And therefore, we being myself and the chief technical officer at that stage, we were still the people that were supposedly in charge of the group of companies, and they were rolling more people into us. So I never felt as though my position was changing. I actually felt it was being enhanced as a direct result of that. And we sold 100% of the business, so there was nobody had any stake in it in that particular perspective. But there was lots and lots of upside in getting these businesses rolled in, getting it developed, getting the EBITDA moving, and becoming part of a bigger picture going forward. And that was quite an exciting offer and formed the middle of one of the reasons why I wanted to do that with this particular business, because I didn't feel as though I was taking a step backwards. I actually felt like I was taking a step up. But over the first 12 months, I realized that corporate culture really isn't for me, because they didn't want me to do what I was used to doing. They wanted me to sit behind a desk and look at spreadsheets and pick up a phone and speak to people. And that's not how I operated and run a business all myself for the previous 30 years. I'm a people person. I need to be in front of people, talking to people. I probably wouldn't have traveled as much if we had Skype and video calls in those days than we do today. But I still think there would still be a large amount of travel around the world, But my view of that is if I'd gone 5 times with somebody to help them get a job, I probably would have done it twice today, and 3 times you would have done it on video in that particular perspective. But it might have cut my air miles down, but other than that.
So it was around 2020, you mentioned that you left the business completely parted ways with anything to do with Harris Pye.
Yep.
How does that feel then? And yeah, actually just stick on that question. How does that feel once you've completely exited a business you've been at for 18
Very
years?
strange. Very, very in a complete void space, because it's nothing that I'd ever experienced before in my life. I'd always had something to do and a diary entry to follow up everywhere I'd been and every country I'd ever traveled to. But I was calmed by the fact the whole world was in the same space, because nobody had anything to do. Everyone was doing something on video, and you couldn't do anything if you wanted to. There was nowhere to go, and nobody was opening businesses. Nobody was chasing things, although Dubai never officially closed. And as a consequence, a lot of SMEs and entrepreneurs moved to this part of the world to start. And I met some really interesting people during that period of time. But again, most of them on video. I'm chatting to people at the other end of Dubai from their kitchen table on a video call in that particular thing. Having said that, I didn't stop traveling because I was in the middle of trying to buy an apartment in Spain. I had to travel to Spain 3 times during that period of time. Once went on an A380 to Madrid with 2 of us on it, which was another interesting experience, should we say. But I think that helped me as an individual calm down and also refocus myself on what was important for me, because I did look at what I had and what data I had with me as an individual and what I had built over that period of time. And my network was very, very geared around the space that I was operating in. And the customers that I had, it wasn't wider than Harris Pye, because I'd been inside of Harris Pye for 26 years at that point in time. So I joined a couple of organizations on video. Fortunately, I was linked with Development Bank because they were a stakeholder in Harris Pye as a business. At that point in time, they'd loaned us some money to build a facility in Lando Trading Estate. And they asked me to sit on their board and be a potential member of any businesses they invested in. And they also introduced me to Angel Invest Wales. And I, over COVID, jumped through some hoops on the video and became a lead angel investor for Dev Bank. And that opened up some network opportunities for me. And I spent 12 months just concentrating on rebuilding my network. And as a result, I think I did a reasonably good job. And I've met some really good and very interesting people as a direct result of some of the businesses and some of the contacts I've made since then.
It's almost like building from scratch again, but with loads of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't have said it made it any easier in that respect. But what it did do is it did give you some focus and it did give you some opportunity. For example, I was a member of the Institute of Directors, but I started becoming involved online with some of the bits and pieces that they were doing and picking up some off side committees and things of that nature. And with 6 months of that, they put me up for a fellowship, which was most interesting. And I came completely out of the woodwork, wasn't expecting that at all. I'm very thankful for that. But it's only then you sit back and think about what you have actually done and perhaps why they did recognize you should have had that in that particular scenario. And what I think are probably things I would just do as a normal individual, and I wouldn't think about anything special about them. You look back at it and think, okay, yeah, you have given a fair bit of time towards that and you have done this and you have done that. So maybe that type of thing is earned in that respect, you know? And
that experience and knowledge is very valuable to people as well.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For you, it's just normal. You know, this is just your life. This is what I've done. I don't think it's anything special. But to someone else, they can pick up so much in such a short space of time. And that's why the advisory and NED and chair positions are so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that led me to the point that I thought, well, you know, I've been on this planet in a business capacity of some description for about 40 years. I'm not ready to hang my spurs up just yet. I've got a wealth of knowledge of opening businesses in, 30, 40 countries around the world, very, very different types of businesses in different spaces. And as a result, who can I help? And for me, my investment journey is about, can I help this business? Can I bring some value to it? Can I add something to it they don't already have? But I also say that I don't want to climb the barbed wire 24/7 anymore, but I'm quite happy to bring a step ladder and hold it there for the founder to get over it that little bit easier in that particular perspective.
So for a long time in your life, 100% of your energy and time was in Harris Pye.
Yep.
How do you split your time now? What do you do to keep busy?
Got a 10-year-old little boy and a younger family. So as a result of that takes a fair chunk of my time. Made me a very different looking person as well over the last 10 years. Didn't have a particularly healthy lifestyle 10 years ago, but I got a much more healthy lifestyle now. And if I had nothing in my diary, waking up and seeing what he's got in his will keep me going for another 8 years at least in that particular perspective. But, that's a plus in my diary, and I want other things beside it in that scenario. So for me, it's about my family. It's about businesses I'm involved in and other businesses that approach me to ask me to become involved. And I just ask, can I help in that scenario? And if I think I can help, yeah, I will. And I might even invest. If I can't help, then I'll politely say I can't, and that's that.
For people watching this, I want you to define the differences between some of the things you do. So you do angel investing, which I'm sure people do, but just explain no one knows anything, right? So the difference between angel investing, a non-exec director position, advisory, and chair, how do they all differentiate?
Okay, good question. An angel invest position is a business. Well, my view of angel investing, because everyone's view is different. Let's start there. My view of angel investing is if you have a business idea and a business proposition that I think I can add some value to, whether it be in some information, some business development, some skill, I may even put some money into the business and align myself with it and operate in what I would say needs to be a free of charge environment. So if I put some money into a business, I put my time into the business for free. I do not believe in putting money into a business and then taking fees back, because that's not angel investing to me. That's feathering your own nest, and as a consequence of that, I want my value to come from that business, from the value I've put into it. So for me, if I angel invest, I'm either putting money in or I'm working with it for free on the board as a advisor, non-exec director, non-exec chair, whatever they want me to be. And we'll talk about those differences in a moment. But I won't be taking any fees for it. If they can't afford to pay me, and a lot of startups can't in that particular perspective, but I still believe in that vision, I may do it for sweat equity in that respect. And what I actually have in reality is a mix of all of those things. So maybe they can't afford what I would like them to pay me. Maybe I don't want them to pay me, but they can afford to pay me with some sweat equity over some time, or on a sweat equity on an exit result. So it gears everybody to produce a result at the end of the day. So it's and that, I just think that keeps everybody focused, and also allows me to back myself, to back that business, and hopefully they get some trust in me as a direct result of it. I'm not asking them to put any money in my hand.
I know there's a lot of people who watch this who are involved in the startup ecosystem, from a technology perspective. You mentioned earlier that you get 20 a month, roughly, and you might do 3 a year. So that's a lot of no's, and a lot of people or businesses you're not interested. So what interests you about the startup that you want to invest in? What do you look for?
It's a question I get asked a lot. And I can't say it's any one individual thing, because if I look at my portfolio, there's med tech, fintech, education tech, property, green tech, renewables, oil and gas. It's quite diverse in that particular perspective. So there's not one thread amongst any of that I think connects it, other than the people. I think people make a business, and the first thing I'm looking for is can I have a connection with the person or the team? Preferably team, not the individual person, or there are individuals there. But an individual may come with a great proposition, and you can become part of his team, and you can help build that team. And then they have a very different look and feel to other investors and other people potentially looking at that business. So that's also an advisory and NED role, just to say, create the team around you, spread the risk amongst the potential investors coming to the table. And that does make a difference to some people. So I look for people first and foremost. And is the idea scalable? And then is it sellable? And in what time frame are we talking about? And it's very, very, sometimes it's very difficult to get a startup entrepreneur to come and talk to you about handing the keys over to somebody else, because they're so passionate about what they're trying to build, and it's going to take this long to build, and that's how it's going to be, and you can't shortcut it. If there's not some sensible discussion about a sensible exit time at the front end, then you've got to second guess that particular one, I would say.
Let's go one layer deeper on the people side of things, because some people I've met have said they can make decisions on people pretty quickly.
Yep.
They just get that feeling. For some people, it might take a few lunches. What specifically about people are you drawn into?
Passion, first and foremost. SME, subject matter expert. Do they really know what they're talking about? Just because they've got a great idea doesn't necessarily mean that they know the ins and outs of that. Doesn't necessarily mean I know the ins and outs of it, but doesn't stop me asking stupid questions in that particular scenario. And then you've got to get a gut feel for that person or team as to how you think they're going to respond when the chips are down, because they are going to be down. There's no two ways about that. It's not all chocolates and roses starting a business, quite the opposite. You're going to be in the weeds a lot. You've got to know that people are resilient. You've got to know that they're going to get out of bed. They're not going to throw their hat in the ring at the first opportunity. So I'm looking for a good mix of passion, resilience, and and a level of tolerance to problems and issues. And I quite often throw some odd spitball questions at people just to see how they would react to that in scenarios that will probably never ever happen. But it's nice to know that they thought about it.
Mm. And where are most of your angel investments in terms of countries?
UK.
Do you plan to expand your portfolio into the UAE or further afield?
Yes, is the short answer. And I'm actively looking for a few more investments next year. So I'm speaking to a couple of people as we talk now. They may or may not come off, but I'm sure there's other businesses out there that I will talk to going forward.
Yeah, I met a gentleman earlier. I won't say his name, obviously. He owns his own family office, or he's part of a family office, and he invests into companies out here as well. And he shared with me the plans for the UAE to, I think, have 2,000 startups here by 2031 and 10 unicorns, which is very ambitious. It's a lot of
very
growth.
Ambitious. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about the UAE startup ecosystem from what you're aware?
I think it's a very fertile space. There's no doubt about that. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities here for people. There's a lot of incubator space. There's a lot of accelerator space. There's a lot of competitive programs run. There's a number of businesses I know from Wales that have been brought here for 3-month programs and fight with each other to try and decide who wins. And then they get a $300,000 investment in their business as a result. And some don't win and never recover from it. Some don't win, learn from it immensely and move forward. So I think there are a lot of opportunities here. I don't think you're particularly far away from them. And by that, I don't think you've got to particularly climb a coal face to sit in front of somebody and be told whether your idea is good, bad, or indifferent. And I think you get a lot of the truth here. And I think the truth is the most important thing that you can hand to people. And I quite like that space here. 10 unicorns is a huge ask. I think the UAEs have got 2 at this stage. So yeah, 10's a lot.
Very ambitious. I'm going to work.
Good to shoot for the moon.
I like it. It works for me and you. I'm going to word this question carefully. There are changes in the UK. I think we're expecting a big announcement today, the day we're actually recording.
Yep.
That might mean that certain companies look at different locations throughout the world to continue to grow their business. I guess, what can you share from all your time here about doing business in the UAE? What can companies consider coming across, and how can they position it to get it right? I
can tell you why we did it, and the reason that we did it in 2013. We moved the effective seat of management, as our auditors called it at that point in time, which was most of our director base. So then our board moved, but we were still a UK centered company. But we created a new business in this part of the world. But the reason we did that was we wanted to employ people. This part of the world had all the sectors that we wanted to employ people from: the heavy engineering, from the marine, the oil and gas side, the design side, the power utility side, but also any specialists that weren't here, we could attract here because it's a very safe place to live. Most of our work was in a lot more unsafe places around the world. So people could come here, leave their families here quite happily and peacefully, and disappear off to darkest depth of South Africa or South America, whatever they happen to be, do their work for 3 months and come back, and their families will live a nice life. We couldn't attract people to come to the UK in 2013 to do that because the employment rules and space is very, very different here to what it is in the UK then, let alone what it's going to look like tomorrow morning if you want to listen to all the speculation that's out there, and I will be listening intently at 4:30 today. I'm sure you will. And I do think there's a lot of over talk about people getting up and moving. I think there's a lot of there's always a lot of rumor mongering. There's always a lot of noise. There's always a lot of speculation, but there are some very, very heavy hitters that have actually done it. And as a result of that, that's probably amplifies the noise somewhat as a direct result. Let's see what happens over the coming months and whether the changes that are made today make a difference in that business space or not. I know of businesses that are in the middle of transactions. Some were supposed to be completed yesterday and they weren't, and they may not now be completed as a result. So it's a living, breathing, moving feast, and it means something different to everybody. So, the job of being a politician is a thankless task. There's no doubt about it because you can't please everybody. And And whatever you do, you're going to get hauled over the coals by some section of your population. So you've got to try and do what's right for the country and the space that you're trying to create. But you also need a clear message about what that actually is. And I'm going to listen to what that is this afternoon.
I'll be listening too. I will be definitely listening. You mentioned earlier about you've been rebuilding your network because you spent so much time in Harris Pye, and now you are branching further afield and meeting people, building relationships with people. I know that having a good network is very important, and I want to know from your side, how have you gone about rebuilding that network? Like, what have you done to be able to get relationships with the people that you wanted to?
I think I two changes that I made very, very early on when I left Harris Pye was I joined Angel Invest Wales, and I joined that space and started talking to very seasoned investors and people who've been involved in startups and business ideas, and started to talk to founders and entrepreneurs and people with ideas, if you like. That brought me into Global Welsh. Global Welsh at that time were backed by Welsh Government and Development Bank. And as a result of that, I asked them over video call why they didn't have a space in this part of the world, because this is where all the entrepreneurs seem to be landing and waving flags all over social media. And the answer was they didn't have anybody in this part of the world to do that. So I said, well, I'll do it. I've got plenty of time. I put a little post on the Welsh page on Facebook, got 20 responses, and we had a couple of video calls, and I ended up with a team of 7-8 people who've been absolutely immense around me. And we hold monthly signposting events and online chats to entrepreneurs, business people from Wales want to ask questions about this neck of the woods. We support the DTI in their trade missions here. And we're very close with Welsh Assembly Government here. Phil Taylor and Sarah Taylor, I don't know whether you know those people, but they're really, really active network and active for Wales in a business space. But Global Welsh is also active in a personal space for Welsh people. So the vast majority of my open network, or the opening of my new network, has come from conversations in those spaces that have led to other things, and then personal visits to other people's businesses or to other networking events, and then things have moved from there.
And I just want to think back to all your experience you've got now. Quite an open question. With all that you've picked up, what are some of the common mistakes or common things that you keep seeing with the businesses that you're looking at? Is there certain bottlenecks that people keep seeing?
It's a really good question, because funny enough, I was talking about this to somebody the other day. About 6 months ago, I was back in Wales and I was invited to a business breakfast, slightly different type of business breakfast on the basis that it's a peer group. So it's only CEOs are allowed to go to that business, or CFOs. And they're there to talk about their businesses and their business issues with other people that may face the same challenges and workshop issues. And I sat, and I was invited as a guest, and I sat and listened to the conversations around the table. And it was all the things I was talking about as a business person 20 years earlier. So I came out of that thinking nothing's changed. Nobody can find good people. Everyone's complaining about late payment. Everyone's worried about their cash flow. Everyone's struggling to get their invoices out the door fast enough. It was all the same subject matter. So I came away from that thinking nothing's changed, just in terms of how a business is perhaps run, but everything's changed in terms of what a business is focused on, or what service it's trying to bring to the table, or what it delivers to its clients. And that, I was expecting a whole new raft of problems, but they were all absolutely identical to what they were 20 years ago.
And the funny thing
Which surprised me.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, everyone thinks their problems are unique.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one else is going through them. It's just me. I'm not getting paid. I'm struggling to find good people. That everyone has those
absolutely.
problems.
And that's why I thought that workshopping space was really valuable to those 20 or so CEOs in there, because they were hearing the same thing from 19 other people. So they're not on their own. It is the same. Everybody was networking with everybody else and see if they could chivvy somebody along to pay their bill a bit quicker, etc. Or I know someone in this space you need to speak to, and identifying good people. Because I mean, I do think we're kind of unique as Welsh people. We like to help Welsh people solve problems. It's very rare that I've ever seen a Welsh company try to close shop to a potential competitor. They're more likely to open up and say and talk about issues that they've seen, and they'll get issues back as a direct result. And I think we just like people to be successful. I certainly want people to be successful, however they're successful. I'd like to see it done.
My last couple of questions are going to be about giving some more value to people that are listening to this. So
Okay.
if you had to give some advice to someone who was going to specifically reach out to you and make contact with you to put their pitch deck or put their investment in front of you, what do you think is the best way of doing that in the world we live in today?
Good question. Most of my approaches come on LinkedIn. However, the level of answer you get depends on how busy I am as an individual at that point in time. I invariably do try and get on my LinkedIn every sort of 3 days at the worst case scenario. And sometimes I'm on it every single day in that respect. But anything that comes to me on LinkedIn over a space of time, maybe a couple of weeks, I will look at it and I will give a response to it. That's the first thing.
And on LinkedIn, I'm going to just assume, might be wrong, most of those are going to be written messages.
Yes.
No one's tried to send a video. No one's tried to send a voice note.
No, thinking about it, I have had links to download other things, but then it's the business idea decides whether I do that or not. And for me, it's can I add value? If it's a space I know absolutely nothing about, then I don't think I can add any value to it. So I tend to just pass. Having said that, the best way to approach me is find me and come up and talk to me, because I'm a people person and I like to talk to people. And if you can orate your idea in a few sentences, then I'll listen.
It's got to find you, Mark. Yeah, UK, Dubai, Spain.
Maybe that's why I run about so much.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go.
The reason why I ask about LinkedIn, by the way, is our next 3 podcast guests have all been booked by sending a video. Send in a personalized video, put the phone up, record, and they were all very impressed.
Absolutely.
So I was thinking for people out there, if you're getting 5 a day, for example, they're all written messages, why not send a video?
Well,
bit of extra effort.
I found a piece of, I found an AI app when I was in Spain the couple of weeks ago, and it's basically you can take any text, whether it be a website, a PDF, a report, some audio, and mix them all together, and it'll create for you a little animated video about all of it and the highlights that you should do, or a little podcast with 2 people talking about what it is and the salient points are. You can even ask it questions and it phrases it for you from that perspective. What I also like about it is I regularly get sent 60, 70 page reports that you want to read the important parts, and normally I'll just read the exact summary if I'm really honest about it. But with this app, you can drop the whole thing into it and it'll turn into a 7-minute podcast. I did it when I was flying back from Spain. It was a 38-page report. Somebody posted on LinkedIn. I downloaded it, dropped it into that app. I had a 12-minute podcast. I was sat on the plane. I listened to it while I was drinking a cup of tea on the plane, and I had all the insights of that report in that respect. And I've been able to talk to people about it as a result. So I think animation, video, audio is a huge step forward from printed page. And it certainly makes you more productive.
And there's all these tools that can do it for you now.
Yeah, totally. I suddenly find myself arguing with myself because I put some questions into an app in that particular perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go.
And I imagine most of the viewers will be younger than you, only slightly.
Probably.
Slightly, Mark. What
decades, I would think.
What are some of the most profound principles or quotes that you live by now after 20, 30 years in business? Like what's in a couple of sentences, how can you just give some value to someone? Authenticity,
I think, is a big word. And it gets used a lot. And I think some people think they're authentic, but I think people who really are can see through that if you're not. Don't come to me with a good idea if you really don't think it's a good idea. And some people do that, and I see straight through that. I don't think that's authentic. So I just want people to be themselves when they come to me. I'd rather somebody come to me and say, look, I think I've got a good idea. What do you think of that? And then let's talk about it. So it's, I think I'd like you to be authentic. I'd like you to be concise, to be perfectly honest. And I'd like you to come to me with a potential exit plan with a business, because I don't want to sit and talk about how this is going to, in 30 years time, develop into something, because as you so rightly said, I probably haven't got 30 years. So as a consequence, I want to know how it's going to be the pinnacle of what they want it to be in the shortest possible space of time. And will they actually let it go? Because people don't actually think about letting it go that early in their journey, and they need to.
I guess my last question for 2026, because we're coming towards the end of the year now. I know investing into some more startups is on your radar, but is there anything that you have planned for the next calendar year which is rather interesting or exciting that you can share?
Yeah, the short answer is no, I can't share, but there are 3 businesses I'm in conversation with at this moment. all three are at the point of fundraising. 2 are in Wales. 1 is not in Wales, is what I'll say at this point in time. And it may have a business here. It may not. It's in other parts of the world. And there are 2 of those that have the potential to be very, very large in a very short space of time. And there's 1 of those that I think will grow very nicely over a 5-year period. And as a result, I think it'll be a good business to invest in. But watch this space.
You gave us just enough information to be excited, but just enough to be curious at the same time.
Decades of experience, Kieran,
you know what
as you said. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. I really hope you enjoyed your first podcast.
I did. Thanks for making it so easy for me.
I appreciate it. And that's the end of episode 3. We hope you enjoyed the podcast with Mark. Make sure you tune in next week for episode 4 and like, comment, and subscribe.